All right, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach. I am pressing the button on and just banging these out. I'm glad I'm making these videos as the episodes are ending. They're only 1 hour long. I'm sure I could have made a video on everything at the end of this, but there's no way. I mean, these are only like basic notes of like things that they talk about during the episode that I just wrote down like as bullet points, just hit to make sure they go through along the way. As I ended you at the end of episode 2, going into episode 3, we looked at the name. The next title of the episode was called The Screwjob, and I really thought this was going to be a 1 hour episode of just Brett and Sean, Montreal, Brett screwed Brett, Vince screwed Brett, blah blah blah, and I really just was not really looking forward to that much. That's just a topic that has just been beaten down. Press the episode for it to start, and I'm greeted by Wendy Richter. And I was lost. I really was lost. I knew what was coming, but I was like, where does this fit in? Wendy Richter was a character like in the mid 80s. She was like one of the main girls. They talked about her in episode 1 during the Cyndi Lauper with the whole MTV thing. Basically, Cyndi Lauper wasn't going to be able to wrestle in matches, but they were going to use her to sort of boost up the women's division. If they had Cyndi Lauper pick a woman to sort of crown as like, this is the face of the women's division for the WWF, it would put her over and it would make women's wrestling mean something. Cyndi Lauper picked Wendy Richter. Wendy Richter, I know she wrestled at WrestleMania 1. I'm not 100% sure if she's around at WrestleMania 2. Like I said in the last video, I've seen that show like one time. I rented that VHS tape as a kid. I've never watched it on DVD. I've never watched it on Blu-ray. I've never watched it on the WWE Network. Every freaking year WrestleMania rolls around, I'm like, this is the year we're doing Hogan, Bundy, Steel Cage. So we can get it crossed off on the list that we have a video for every WrestleMania that's out there. Never get a chance to get it done, but Wendy Richter, basically Vince went to her and decided it was time to take the championship on her. She thought she was a bigger star than what she was. I don't think it had to do really with money or anything. It just, she wanted to be champion. And Wendy Richter had a match. They put her in there with the Black Widow, I think is what it was. Black Scorpion, something to that effect. And Vince told the referee, just, there's going to be a cover. No matter what happens, count the 3. And that's basically what happened, is that the Fabulous Moolah was under the hood wrestling against Wendy Richter that night. She rolled up Wendy, and Wendy Richter kicked out on 1, and the referee still gave the decision. She rang the bell. Gorilla Monsoon said, oh, that one was close. And then he's even stunned that he doesn't know what's going on, and he's doing commentary on the show, and he's trying to cover up what he said. And there's a new champion. As far as I know, Wendy Richter might have done some independence, but Wendy never went to any other promotion. She never went to the AWA, never went to Crockett, never went to what WCW was. I don't know. She just got out of the business. And I don't think I ever really heard of her again until WWE brought her back for something like the Hall of Fame or something like that. I don't even think she's been put in, but I think she's a face that's been around wrestling the last couple of years, trying to bridge the gap for everything that happened bad throughout the years. That, I guess, was just a future of what was to come later on in the documentary for this episode, but I was lost. I really was lost. This one, they showed the end of the steroid trial, where basically Hulk Hogan, who even though the federal government thought was going to testify against Vince McMahon, just kind of was telling them whatever they wanted to hear till they put him on the stand. And then Hulk couldn't, just turn on Vince. It was almost like a babyface turn, even though he wasn't in the company. He wasn't on the company dime. It was almost like he knew what everybody wanted him to do, but he couldn't turn heel against the guy that gave him everything that he has in the world as of today. Who knows what would have happened if after Rocky 3 with Thunder Lips, if he would have got more acting jobs, if he just would have made the AWA blow up. But if that guy never would have brought him into the WWF and started pumping the Hulkamania and the Hulkamania shirts, done the rock and wrestling thing, WrestleMania, and then that, it just printed money. And even though, like, now Hogan isn't really looked at as the same kind of a star, he was one of the biggest stars in the world, period. Watching wrestling or not, you knew who Hulk Hogan was. And Hogan went up there and basically said that he did steroids. Vince never sold them to him. Vince never gave them to him. Vince never told him he had to do it. Everything that he did was as of his own choice. And the federal government lost their case against Vince McMahon. Vince went back to running the WWF. There was never a turnover to the Jarretts. They just picked up and they tried to move on like nothing had ever happened, even though they had no Hulk Hogan, and it was the star that was going to be happening to replace. The first guy that they tried to do was Lex Luger with Lex Express, where he went in there and he body slammed Yokozuna on the U.S. Intrepid, and then that boosted his title shot for SummerSlam. Even though he won the match due to count out, there was a stipulation that he would never get another title shot if he didn't win it there. So he ended up having to win the Royal Rumble, which was the big WrestleMania 10 storyline. Why Lex is not in the Hall of Fame, I've got no clue. The guy was a big star. He did a lot for wrestling. He was not Hulk Hogan, like Vince McMahon said. So they would have a new crop of guys. They would have Brett, Razor, Shawn Michaels. They would have Diesel. They were the so-called stars of the new generation. As long as having Undertaker out there, who had been around for a little while. Bret the Hitman Hart said that those 5 wrestlers were the best wrestlers in the history of wrestling. That they basically ran the company and they could outperform anybody. The main problem with the new generation was the undercard. Vince didn't have a full card of stars. You were looking at guys like the Smoking Guns, Doink, Crush. They had big colors, they had bright lights, but there was just not that exclamation. In the 80s, they took stars from every different organization. Basically, if there was a company that was out there and you were one of the top 2, if not the top 3 guys in that territory, you were coming to work for Vince. Everybody on that card from the top to the bottom. It's kind of like when you talk about like a guy on an NFL team or a guy on an NBA team. Anybody that's on that roster at one point in high school, if not in college, was the best player on their team. They might not be one of the best players in the NBA or the NFL, but you put him out there against anybody else. I'm talking like pros versus Joes or anything like that. They're going to get smoked. The worst basketball player could go out there on the court with me, and they're going to beat me 21-0 every time. I'm not getting nothing off. So that's kind of the problem with the new generation, is that they had great main events, they had horrible undercards. But they were building and they were trying. One of the big bombs that went off, that we were starting the WCW war, where they were trying to get guys to go up against WWF because the gap was closing, was WCW signed Randy Savage. Randy Savage was a guy that would wrestle spontaneously for the WWF on a Monday Night Raw here or there, maybe like a WrestleMania. He wrestled against Crush at WrestleMania 10. But Savage wanted to be a main guy. He still saw him as a main star. He wanted to, if not carry the torch for the WWF, being a main eventer, he wanted to be like that legend that they thought they had with Hulk Hogan, and when they were going to pass the torch and have Warrior be the champion. Still be a guy that still brought them to him, but they just used him on commentary. And sometimes that boosted up a match, like he wrestled against the Repo Man, he wrestled against Doink on episodes of Monday Night Raw, but they were not fulfilling. WCW came, Eric Bischoff, Ted Turner, they gave him a great deal, like they gave Hulk Hogan. I don't think he got the pay-per-view tie-ins, but he got a big bulk of his merchandise. He got a big guaranteed contract that no matter what happened, he was going to get paid, because it was backed not by WCW. If they would have went out of business, he still would have got his money through Turner, something that would come up later in the decade, I guess you can say, when WCW sold. But Savage leaving kind of crushed Vince. He has that thing on commentary where he announces that Savage has left the WWF. I think he looked at him as like a big star. But there was a little part of me that noticed when they talked about WrestleMania 4, when they talked about WrestleMania 5, when they talked about Saturday Night's Main Event, no Randy Savage talk. I know that a lot of people make a mountain out of a molehill. I love talking about conspiracy theories. I don't think the main one that is out there on the internet is true about like Savage and Stephanie. But a little part of me was like, man, does Vince really hate Randy Savage? If not for leaving to go to WCW and being that last star to really jump ship on him. But like, what happened there? From there, Ted Turner ups WCW by basically asking Eric Bischoff, what do we need to do to go out there and close this gap, win this war against WWF? And that's when Eric Bischoff asked to go primetime live against Monday Night Raw with the start of Nitro. They did a lot of things on those episodes of Nitros, like give away results so that you didn't have to watch the show. You could just keep watching Nitro. One of my favorite ones is when they talk about, Shawn Michaels super kick Sid. It was a super kick that, is no greater than, your little kid at the karate class. Oh, that's what it is. It's learning the super kick that he learned at the Y or something like that. But Vince had never sold anything that had ever happened against them. He never, wanted to go out there and admit that he was losing, or didn't want to admit that he wasn't as big as he was. But they started doing these Billionaire Ted skits with basically the Huckster and the Nacho Man, with aging guys, like senior citizens almost, playing Ultimate Warrior, and Macho Man, as well as having a very comical Ted Turner, falling asleep, wasting his money, missing spots, things like that. This is a feud that they actually used. They didn't use it on pay-per-view because I think they would have got sued, is what I've heard. The reason why, but it's on the WrestleMania, is it 11 or 12? I think it might be 12. It's on the WrestleMania 12 pre-show. You have to find like a VHS dub copy of it. It's not on any of the DVD releases. It's not on the network unless you watch the Monday Night War documentary. You can watch clips on there. But they actually had a match on the pre-show between the Huckster and the Nacho Man from your high school gym that Ravi used to always talk about. But it was the first time that Vince ever, said the other guys' names. Didn't matter if it was WCW, NWA, Crockett, AWA, anybody that ever got one up on them, they never put it out there. They never sold it. One of the best stories, I believe, is from Houston Wrestling, when they were doing some sort of a tribute. I think they were closing up with the arena there or something like that, or maybe selling off a territory. Vince and Bruce Pritchard went there, as well as some wrestlers, and they sort of got screwed. But Vince turned to Eric Bischoff and he said, hey, we didn't come here for what we thought we were coming here for. They lied to us, but we're going to go down there. We're going to enjoy their after party, and we're not going to let them know that they got one up on us. Just let them think that we think that they forgot. And we're not gonna let them know that they got one up on us tonight. It's been a long time since I listened to that show. It was one of the first episodes, and I remember when they were going through and they said that they were gonna do that episode. I kind of was like, oh, I don't really know anything about it, so it's probably not gonna be great. And it was really good. From there we go to Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Basically. Leaving, they decided that they were going to sign with WCW. They got guaranteed money. They got like a third of the dates. They were going to have to work Nitro. They were going to have to work pay-per-views. There might be a sporadic house show, but the house show schedule was going to be way different from what they were used to doing when they were traveling the miles. They were going to be able to be at home with their family and count their money, and basically that's what they were going to do. One of the biggest things that happened with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash on their last show, which was a house show from Madison Square Garden. They had Triple H versus Razor Ramon as like one of the undercard mid-main event matches, and the main event match that was supposed to send everybody home happy, Diesel versus Shawn Michaels in a steel cage. Shawn Michaels had gone to Vince McMahon and basically asked, like, hey, once this is all over, can we, like, say goodbye? Could we do something special? And Vince asked Shawn, is this important to you? Shawn says, yes, it is. So he says, hey, do what you got to do. So Triple H, Razor, they come down to the ring after Diesel and Shawn. They get into the ring. Everybody thinks it's going to be some sort of a schmoz thing. And they hug. They come together. They hug one last time. They do the click symbol together. They all join hands. They bow to the crowd. They're all saying thank you, and they appreciate it. Most of the fans there love what's going on. Some are confused, thinking like they're turning babyface or something like that. They're like joining a new stable. It's a New York crowd, so I think most of them even know what's going down from reading the sheets at the time. But they ask Undertaker, and Undertaker's, he says, yeah, I worked there. Yeah, I got some thoughts about it. And they don't like straight up ask him, like, what were your thoughts? But he just says, like, yeah, I didn't like it. And Cody Rhodes says that for somebody his age, that was fucking awesome. That was really cool to see the other side of the curtain inside the ring there. For somebody that's been in the business, it was exposing the business. And I think there was so many people backstage that had their feelers hurt about this, whether at the time I would think it would be like Bam Bam Bigelow, who wasn't named, I'm just throwing that out there, that Vince had to, do something to rattle it out. When it comes down to it, Shawn Michaels and, scratch that. When it comes down to it, we've got Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They're not showing up to work tomorrow. They're going home and resting up and waiting in for WCW to bring them in for something. So you've only got Shawn, who's carrying the belt. They can't really do anything to him. So Triple H, who's just a mid-carder guy around like the Intercontinental title picture, I guess you can say. He probably held the title twice at that time. He's the one that ends up eating shit with this whole curtain call situation. Basically, he was told he was going to win the 1996 King of the Ring. He lost the King of the Ring in the first round to Jake the Snake Roberts. Everybody always tells the story that Triple H is going to win the 1996 King of the Ring, which kind of fit the storyline at the time. But nobody ever talks about how big of a boost it was to the company. I don't think Stone Cold Steve Austin gets the big he got if he doesn't win that. Now, let me tell you this. Stone Cold Steve Austin is going to beat Jake the Snake Roberts in the finals to be crowned the king of the ring. He doesn't put the hat on. He doesn't put the coat on. That's not Stone Cold Steve Austin. But, as they're carrying Jake the Snake Roberts out, who had a rib injury at the time, he does the whole, that's Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass. I don't know when Austin's going to be able to say that and it have the exclamation point on it to sort of push him. His push didn't come overnight. I mean, SummerSlam that year, Stone Cold Steve Austin is wrestling Yokozuna in a match nobody cared about on the free-for-all for SummerSlam. Nobody watched the free-for-all to see a match. Doesn't matter who it is. Nobody's watching it for Stone Cold Steve Austin. Nobody's watching it for Yokozuna. Anybody who probably watched that match was watching it because they didn't buy SummerSlam that year, and they were just wanting to watch a little bit of wrestling. And honestly, in my place, when I was watching the free-for-alls, I was hoping they forgot to flip the switch, and I got to watch the entire show for free. That was the wish that was going through my mind each and every time I watched a free-for-all. If I bought the show, I guarantee he probably wasn't turning that show on until minutes before it was supposed to start the main card, because I knew the money was in the bank. We already paid for it. We're gonna watch that main stuff. I don't need to watch Todd Pettengill hyping this stuff up. So if this whole thing with breaking kayfabe, with the curtain call doesn't happen, who knows if we ever get Stone Cold Steve Austin. Then we go to the NWO Outsiders invading WCW, of course, on the not the first episode, but the episode of Monday Nitro when Scott Hall just comes down during a match with two guys. We should have known something was going on just because of the guys that were in the ring. It's pretty much two jobbers of WCW. I don't know, Mike Enos. I can't remember the guys that were in there. I know that the Colonel Robert Parker was out there managing one of them. So, but you were probably watching the show wondering what the heck was going on with the booking of this, anyways. But we got Scott Hall comes in. He makes a promise like, "Hey, we're here to take over. We want to play where the big boys play." He does that a few weeks, aggravating Eric Bischoff, and he's like, we're basically like, what are we doing here? And then we're almost going to have a thing when Scott Hall and Sting come to blows. And he's like, I got a big surprise for you next week. Big surprise ends up being Kevin Nash. They're really making you think that it's the real guys, Razor Ramon and Diesel, invading WCW from WWF. They don't ever say Scott Hall. They don't ever say Kevin Nash until WCW files. Screwed it up again. Until WWE files a lawsuit against them for portraying them the way they are. And I think Eric Bischoff on the Great American Bash just flat out asks them, like, do you work for the WWF? Are you invading us from them? And they have to say no. I think that's kind of when you get the name Scott Hall. That's when you get the name Kevin Nash. They're the Outsiders. They propose to have a match at Bash at the Beach. I don't know, but I remember as I was watching the Great American Bash when it was on TV, we had the black box at the time, that I thought they were going to wrestle that night. I don't know against who, but I really thought they were going to have a match. And then it ends up just being an interview at the top of the stage. And then they powerbomb Eric Bischoff through the table off of the ramp, which doesn't really make sense when Eric Bischoff joins the NWO. And he's the guy that was always pushing it all along. He's like, you want to know what's going to make them believe this? You powerbomb me through the stage. I don't know many heels that do that, but sometimes you just got to put it together yourself. But it was a really fun time in wrestling when you had to really guess, like, is this real? Is this fake? They have a debate whether what they're putting it, it's Eric Bischoff doing it, but they're putting it Ted versus Vince. And they're having a debate whether if Ted is trying to put Vince out of business. Is Ted a bad guy for doing this? And I think Vince kind of wishes he didn't say something that he did, and he kind of says that Ted's a bad person for doing this, and they kind of bring up, like, isn't this the same thing you did in 84 and 85, signing all the stars from all the different territories and bringing them in, and Vince kind of has to back talk. He doesn't really get off of his horse, but he's kind of like, I see your side. But I think the bomb drops where WWF has to figure their stuff out when Hogan joins the NWO, the Bash to the Beach. I'm not really sure if this is the same time period of WrestleMania 12. I think because it would have to be after that, because Razor is not on WrestleMania 12, but Diesel is, if I remember right, and then he says goodbye, so it is after that. But the stuff they're doing, WrestleMania 12, I put that right along with WrestleMania 2, or no, I'm thinking of 11. So I think this is around the time of WrestleMania 12. I apologize. WrestleMania 11, the one where it's 11 is the one they do like up in the with Bam Bam. So 12 is in Anaheim. I get these confused. I'm getting old, guys. I apologize. Now let me get back on track. What I was trying to say is this has to be around the time of like WrestleMania 12. WrestleMania 12 is in Anaheim. That's the one that they were going to do the Miami Backlot Brawl, but Razor doesn't want to fight Goldust because of the, we'll just say, stuff. And then so maybe this goes up like around the time of like WrestleMania 13. I was just trying to basically say the WrestleMania 12. Like, people can put that Iron Man match all they want to over, and let's say you give that some points of being a good match. That WrestleMania, not good. WrestleMania 13, you can talk about, the Shawn Michaels versus Austin match being one of the best matches of all time. That match, you take that off there, that's horrible WrestleMania as well. Just WWF is just not knocking it out of the park at that time. It's just not good. Vince is like just trying to figure out how the heck he's going to keep this together. You basically, Hogan's gone, Savage is gone, Nash and Hall are gone. So you're not only signing the veteran stars, you're signing stars that they made to be the future of the new generation, and half of it's already gone. So Vince signs Brett to a 20-year deal, basically saying, like, I don't want you to leave. I gotta have you. The second that Vince signs this deal, he has ultimate, like this is not good. Brett and Shawn, two big stars. You would think it'd be awesome. Just put those guys on top. Maybe like build two more guys up. You've also got Undertaker at this time. You could have an awesome main event. Just have those guys trade the belt back every 3-4 months. Build up big shows for that. And Brett and Shawn's going to be able to be a big match that is going to give you 30-35 minutes on a pay-per-view that you can do it. But the biggest thing about Brett that I see in his character and his person, and it's a good thing, he's one of the best there is out there. He's one of the best. It's just, I have a hard time with Hulk Hogan separating Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea. Hulk Hogan, awesome wrestler. Terry Bollea says some really stupid stuff, and like his last 10 years, I wish he would just like lock himself in a cabin and enjoy the rest of his life and just never see the limelight. But he just consistently has to put himself in front of a camera doing this or that, trying to, get back out there and be the star that he was 20 years ago. Brett, I see, is a lot like that. Brett, I think, has a hard time separating what he did back in the day and what he kind of still thinks he could do. I think that he has a big thing where he doesn't understand why he's not in Triple H's spot. But Brett kind of acts like everything he did in the wrestling business is real, and I think Shawn didn't like that. So like Brett would do the favor for Shawn, and then when it was time for Shawn to do it back, Shawn doesn't do the favor for Brett. Instead, doing the WrestleMania rematch, Shawn loses his smile and is stripped of the championship. They kind of pretty much hand it to Brett. Brett has to go out there, fight a different match, when Brett and Shawn would have been great, but just they couldn't coexist. They're fighting backstage at Monday Night Raw, pulling each other's hair, and it's killing the mood of the company. It's almost like Gang Wars of 1997 was like really what was going on backstage. Everybody was clicking up. It didn't matter if you were with DX, you were with the Nation, you were with the Hart Foundation. Everybody had a side to this war, and it was pulling everybody apart. And if he's not doing jobs, why do I gotta do jobs? And they had to find a way to fix this. That leads us all to Montreal. Brett is basically shown his contract, shown that there's stipulations in this contract where Brett could go to WCW. There's like how they do like players contracts in like baseball, basketball. There's player options. Brett's contract has Bret the Hitman Hart options, and basically like if he doesn't think that he's making enough money, he can go to WCW. He can ask for a deal, and if it's more than what Vince is willing to pay, he can go. He's a free agent. So Bret goes to WCW and Eric Bischoff, and he negotiates a deal that he's going to sign, I believe, November 1st of 1997. And before that, they have Survivor Series, and they're going to do Bret versus Shawn. Bret the Hitman Hart comes into Survivor Series as the champion. They need to find a way to get the belt off him, and Bret starts making excuses. He can't lose to Shawn. He wants to lose to Ken Shamrock. He wants to lose... I know Ken Shamrock was the biggest one. He wanted to lose the Undertaker. He wanted to go, have some sort of a smoz finish with a disqualification, and then he would walk to Monday Night Raw and he would do a clean job. He doesn't want to lose the title in Canada. Excuse after excuse, thing after thing. Things that Bret the Hitman Hart did a lot of good for the WWF. I really think that Vince should have listened to Bret. I think that I think he might have thought that Bret's career, for the most part, was done. But he should have seen that maybe he can go to WCW, make a lot of money, and then for the twilight of his career, maybe find a way to come back, whether if it's as like an aging star, whether if it's as an announcer, or whether if it's a manager. He had done a lot, and he has the skills that he could do a lot in wrestling if he wanted to do it. Vince really takes the side of Shawn and starts to listen to Triple H, and Triple H is saying that if he doesn't want to do business, we got to do business for him. We've talked about this 1,000 times, but they go in the ring, they put the sharpshooter on. Bret loves to say that Shawn didn't do it right and he had to fix it. Hebner rings the bell. Vince is there because he wanted to be there, so everyone would know that he was the guy who made the call. He didn't want Triple H. He didn't want Shawn to get any of the heat for it. He told them to lie to everyone for the rest of their lives that, they didn't know anything about it. That lasted roughly, I think Shawn Michaels did a shoot interview around, no, I think he lied in his RF video shoot interview that he did in the late 90s. I think it was an episode of the Spike TV Confidential. I think is when they had Shawn Michaels come out and said that he knew about it. And it wasn't until I think like the McMahon documentary where Triple H came out and said that he was the one that had the idea to screw him over. I think that Jim Cornette likes to think that he came up with the screw job in the booking meetings. Maybe it was a couple people that said the same thing, and Vince finally took the idea and ran with it. But I knew it was coming because of all the stuff. But when I saw the Wendy Richter stuff at the start of the episode, I was kind of thrown. Especially how we went backwards in time in the documentary. But I think they were just foretelling what was going on here. But the next episode of the series is called Attitude. They got to be going into the Attitude Era. So at the beginning of the next episode is right after Survivor Series. I'm expecting them to be getting their ass kicked for the next 3-4 months. But I mean, Tyson, he comes into the company. He's there at the Royal Rumble, even though, like, one of the things, like, to show you how down they were, the Royal Rumble was done, like, in San Jose. That's not a major market. Wherever it was in California, it's not San Francisco. It's not even Sacramento. It's not L.A. I don't know why they picked that one, but they must have known they could sell out a small arena. But I mean, even when they're showing Tyson in the press box or the box that he's in, saying that he's rooting for Cold Stone, it's small, and you can tell even that box is pretty crappy compared to the boxes that were in other major arenas all over. So I don't know whether they did it next one, but I'm looking forward to it. So this is going to be, hold on, 1, 2, 3. This is episode 3, so I'm starting episode 4. We're halfway there. Peace out.